Alrighty, good morning and welcome to NycosRPG. I'm Jonathan Albin and this is Game Master's Soapbox. And as usual, I have some things to say, but today I would like to ask some questions. There are times that we go through our game sessions week over week and we don't really question why we do what we do, and we don't even think about what it is that we do. So today I have some questions for you. Let's get into it.
Absorbing damage is the name of the game. From the claws of monsters or the heat from a ball of flame. Our strength in numbers is a roll of the dice.
Alrighty, so today we're going to be talking about role-playing games, and of course the principal question, and perhaps the only real question to ask, is are you having fun? Are you enjoying the game sessions that you are in? If you are not in a role-playing games group, are you enjoying the game sessions that you do get into, whether they be spontaneous one-shots or perhaps a once-in-a-while big event at a game store? Are you enjoying it? Because if you're not having fun, there are a lot of questions that stem from that. But let's just go with that one for now. I can tell you that I am having a lot of fun with the games groups that I'm involved with, and of course I anticipate that my players do as well. But this is a question that I often ask because I want to make sure that I'm keeping tap with what's really going on with my players and what they are getting from the game sessions themselves. Now, when you talk about role-playing games, there are a ton of different styles. My personal favorite is Theater of the Engaged Mind, where you're just building things in ether and engaging in conversations about those fictional locations. Now, we often tie it directly to a map of sorts, and I think I've shown that to you before, and perhaps in a later episode we'll go over the details of it, but the minutiae is really not important. Right now, what is your style of play? Perhaps theater of the mind isn't your thing. Are you miniatures based? Are you an aficionado of how many inches a unit can move, or what kind of range a weapon can reach? These are all questions that come from this idea of what style. Still others play in virtual tabletop because they play online, and in those games perhaps there's an allure to the attractiveness of the map, the scale, the detail that the storyteller or game master puts into his efforts. So one of the keys to understanding if you're having fun in the game is what game style you play, because if you are dissatisfied, perhaps just a change of style or change of venue you need to consider. Of course, in dealing with that, you have to think about what is the violence level of your game. Dungeons and Dragons as a mechanic requires fundamentally the ending of lives on a constant basis, and so you're destroying monsters, defeating opponents, and such like. If there's a dynamic in your game that is causing confusion or difficulty between your players, it may be the level of violence that you're including. Some game masters run basically a fightless combat mechanism. They utilize drama and dynamics to overcome the need for the actual coming to blows. But perhaps the game that you're playing is along the lines of Warhammer 40k, where units are removed with consistency and regularity turn after turn. The thought, though, is even in that case, are we speaking of tabletop quote violence when it's simply eliminating units, removing them from the field, or is there more for perhaps body horror involved in the games that you run? If there's a burning need to know how someone might demise. These are all things that are dependent upon the violence that you have in your game. I'm aware of role-play game mechanisms that require none of that, and players seem to be enjoying the interpersonal dynamics of social interaction, whether it be meeting individuals on the street and interacting with them, or perhaps hunting down and desiring specific conversations with history, people from history, or to consider the possibilities of what other people might think, and therefore there is no violence whatsoever. So when you think about what games you play and whether you're satisfied, think about what the level of violence is in the game. If it's fitting your needs, great. If it's disturbing you a little, perhaps you need to consider other games mechanisms. Also, a great importance is the player mix you have at your table. I have a games group that operates for players between 8 years old and 80 with equal aplomb, but some game masters prefer to have a very narrow mix of 3 to 4 individuals of the same cultural background, the same concepts, and shared, for example, videography. They've seen the same movies and therefore they appreciate the sameness of their game. On the other hand, playing at a broader table might bring into conversation concepts that are not found in those more narrow tables, and instead perhaps are a bit more eye-opening. And I know these questions seem to be abstract and unrelated, but I think you'll see by the time we get to the end why I'm asking them. Because if your player mix is narrow, maybe it's an opportunity for you to broaden that by expanding to new players, perhaps picking up new venues where you play and trying out different styles. And this one in today's world is perhaps more to the point than most, and that is, are you paying for the opportunity to play? I operate at a game store for 2 of my sessions, and my online group is made up of my Patreons. So in answer to the question, yes, I'm being paid to play. I'm being paid to be a storyteller. But the reality of it is that the compensation is not the reason to do so. Instead, the compensation is, at least to me, at least to my way of thinking, a bit of allowing the players to get some skin in the game, that they feel that they are investing their time well and they're enjoying their game sessions. Now, does that mean that your players stay stable in a paid group? Sometimes not. But the question becomes, if they are getting just value for what they are putting into the system, then you're doing well. And the reason to ask this question really is also to look at the future of role-playing games. The mechanisms for such, the actual product, will always be available, and there's always going to be a price tag to that. So if a game master is constantly amplifying and expanding the horizon of his game sessions, that means he's doing some effort, and so the compensation at least feels, to my way of thinking, to be a just compensation. Now, next question, of course, is, are you the game master? If you are enjoying games week over week, month after month, year after year, and you are well versed in the rules, I would ask you the question of, if you are not a game master, why not? Because each person has their own take on concepts and situations, and by experimenting and expanding into those areas, you actually also increase the opportunity for more games to be played, because even if you are playing with the same folk, when you rotate who is the game master, you also rotate the opportunity for others to practice their skills and experiment. And this is something that's come up in my game sessions. I'm going to be doing some exploration in the next few months, and I'll get back to you on this. But think about for a while what the difference really is between a game master and another player at the table. wherein the story itself is the character that they're playing. I've talked about this a couple of times before, but I will get into more detail in future episodes. Now, next question. Are you playing your role-play games online? Are you operating through Discord or Roll20 or any of the other VTT mechanisms that are out there? And if you are playing online, is your game Theater of the Mind, or is it miniatures based using VTTs? I've seen both, and I've seen both work both well and poorly. And it really is a great question to ask, because if you say, I'm a role-play gamer, but you only play in real life situations, then are you limiting yourself and your possibilities, or are you being more true to the aspect of role-playing games? And these are both equally valid possibilities. But the reason why I'm asking has everything to do with why you're utilizing the mechanisms you are if they are not being satisfying. Going back to our first question, if the games you're playing are fun, if you're enjoying them, then it doesn't matter who is asking or what the process is, the game is working for you. But if you are playing and yet there are confusions in your mind about what your purpose is or what is going on within the game, perhaps you want to look at some other alternatives, such as looking at the online community. Next question. Are you playing in an ongoing campaign, or are you playing a series of one-shots? I know a lot of people think of a campaign being a single storyteller who relates different stories week over week over week, but if they are not connected in some fashion, if each one is its own separate venture, then fundamentally you're running a serial one-shot rather than a campaign by definition. Of course, what is to one person a campaign is to another a series, so it's really kind of irrelevant, other than the fact that as a long-term game master, the story that the players engage in really is an important aspect of the joy they're feeling. Perhaps if your experience is off again, on again, it might be because the campaign style, the one-shot style that you are participating in, is not feeding the particular tastes that you have developed. And it's important to try to find a game that actually works within what you're looking for, rather than only playing with the people you know the way you've been playing because it's always been done that way. So it's really a matter of, exploration. Now, the next question is, how do you play? And that, of course, is a $64,000 question. Are you a player who is diving deep into the story and you're wanting to understand how things are developing, and you're working almost in a meta-play environment where the actions of your characters are important to the story, but they are also your tools for doing that exploration? On the other hand, perhaps you are a completionist, and you simply have check marks that are the advancement of your character, and you haven't completed all of them, and so therefore your story keeps going week over week only because you're trying to fill in all of those boxes. They're equally valid ways to play. They're different, and their structure might be considerably different. And it's something to think about when you're looking at the table that you're playing at and the people you are playing with. If there's any disconnect or dissatisfaction, it might be because you play differently from your other compatriots. That's not necessarily a bad thing. As a matter of fact, in the groups that I run, I have some people that are objectivists that want to finish various objectives along the game's line and check mark the successes. Others are looking for their characters' development and advancement and enrichment regardless of the story. They are, internally focused on what the character is attempting to accomplish, and that has made their game sessions meet what they're looking for. And so think about the level of happiness and dissatisfaction you have, and look at again how you're playing, because it may be that you're not matching point for point with your game master. Perhaps the game master's bringing to the table a specific style of play that is uncomfortable, and this leads to an increase in enjoyment when you take the time to actually engage with your storyteller, with your game master, and determine whether you are playing the same game, so to speak. One of the easiest ways to do this is for you to actually think on your game session and focus upon which parts of the game bring you the most joy. Is it the defeat of the monster? Some people relish those risky situations that put them in danger, and yet they survive. Others are looking at the pile of loot and are determining their success or their worthiness in the world in terms of the items and elements that they receive from the game. Maybe the joy of your game is watching other people having to deal with role-playing situations that may cause them discomfort, but that they grow from. So really you want to think about what it is that brings you joy, because when you can focus on that part that makes you have a good time, then you're going to be able to more clearly help others reach their objectives as well. Another great question to ask is how many people are at your table. Most game masters operate with 2 to 4 players at their tables. Some game masters can accommodate 8, and there's crazy people like me that has dealt with on a regular basis 16 to 20 players at a session. And how many people are at the table does impact how much fun you get out of the game, because if you are enjoying the large group, then you are just as likely to be enjoying individual play as you are collective group play, and therefore you're perhaps getting from the game or deriving more fun than someone who feels overwhelmed by the numbers and intimidated by the personalities. So these are all things that you need to consider when you're looking at your game in terms of what you find to be enjoyable or fun at the table. Now, this is the question, the $64,000 question is, what is your table missing? What is it that isn't happening at the table that would bring you greater joy? Once you've looked at the mechanism that you're playing in, and you've looked at the tools that you've brought to the session, consider what the net income is to you. Some people play because it's part of their culture to be a part of something, but they're not actually engaged in the story at all. They're just enjoying being with the group. Others are looking for a way to stand out and be accounted for, and that's difficult in a larger group. If we're looking at the mechanisms, if you are perhaps not well attuned with the concepts of distance and ranging, maybe miniatures tables would be difficult for you, and therefore less enjoyable because it would give you discomfort. Or on the other hand, maybe that's exactly your purview. The idea here is to think about what you are bringing to the table and what the table is bringing to you. Game masters, if you are playing a game and you are missing something, then that possibly means that your style needs to be updated or altered, and to consider still other possibilities or options that you haven't before in terms of your table. This also, at the end of the video, is my question to you. What are you missing at your table, and what things could you add that you haven't before? And I'd love to hear from you. Let's have a great conversation about game styles. And I thank you for watching. I'm Jonathan Albin. This has been NycosRPG's Game Master Soapbox, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Don't forget to hit all the buttons if you're enjoying the show. And if you're not, thank you for your time, and I'm glad you